Welcome to Leadership Reimagined, where game-changing conversations are reshaping the world of work. I'm Janice Ellig, the CEO and founder of Ellig Group, Executive Search Advisors, where we are reimagining search through our long-standing commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. On today's episode, I'm delighted to have as my guest Sarah Megan Thomas, an award-winning actress, producer, and writer. For her latest feature, A Call to Spy, Sarah wrote the screenplay, produced, and plays legendary spy Virginia Hall. The film won numerous awards on the festival circuit, including an Audience Choice Award and the ADL Stand-Up Award at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. Sarah's previous film was the groundbreaking Equity, in which she created the concept, co-wrote the story, produced and starred. A first of its kind, Equity is a female-driven Wall Street thriller. The film premiered in dramatic competition at the Sundance Film Festival, where it was sold to Sony Pictures Classics. The New York Times made Equity a critic's pick when it was released theatrically nationwide. The Hollywood Reporter reviewed Sarah's performance as, I quote, subtle but gutsy. Sarah was honored with a Women's Image Network Award and the Creative Coalition Spotlight Award for Equity. Sarah also wrote, produced, and starred opposite James Van Der Beek in the romance drama Backwards, and has appeared in various other films and television shows such as Law & Order and SVU. Welcome, Sarah, and thank you for taking the time from your busy schedule to join us here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you and I go back a ways to when you were producing Equity, and full disclosure, I was one of your investors in Equity and one of your investors in this latest film, A Call to Spy. They are really, truly moving films that everybody has to see. Can you share some of your background and how your career progressed as an actor, writer, and award-winning producer?
Sure. So, my background is actually as an actress. I was a theater major at Williams College, and then I went on and got a graduate degree in London in acting. Very well versed in Shakespeare. When it comes to making money, which is the subject of, Equity, the Wall Street film, it was difficult. I was bartending, I was getting roles as the girl next door, doing commercials, etc. But I wasn't fulfilled as an artist with the roles I was getting, specifically in regards to them being women's roles that weren't very strong. So I decided to just create the work that I wanted to see and start with what are commercial genres in film. So sports film, Wall Street film, spy film, and then look at it from a female lens and an independent film lens of what haven't we seen in these universes in terms of complex women, and then create and write those stories.
So your focus on gender inequality comes from you didn't see the opportunity to play in those films, and so you created your own. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. And also just I didn't see them on television or in film and wanting to have those products out there. I was missing in my life seeing a female-driven Wall Street movie. I love Wolf of Wall Street. I love Margin Call. But the women are basically props or they're part of the romance. And I was like, where are the strong women in Wall Street that I know exist, and why don't we see them in film? Much like, the Gina Davis Institute says, if she can see it, she can be it. So part of my larger mission is to put these types of female roles on screen so that young girls and women can see them and aspire to be them.
And that's why you've had so many investors, both men and women, really behind you on this. So you have three major films: A Call to Spy, which was released now in 2020, Equity in 2016, and Backwards in 2012. Let's start with the most recent, because this is inspired by true stories of three women who worked as spies in Churchill's secret army. Now, you had your world premiere in 2019 at the Edinburgh International Film Festival for this film, and it was released October 2. And so we can see it in theaters, right, and on demand?
Yeah, it's everywhere right now. Given the pandemic landscape, it's in theaters that are open, but it's also on Amazon, iTunes, your local provider like Verizon or Comcast, many ways to see it.
So give us some of the headlines of what it took to make this really inspiring movie of three very brave women.
Yeah, so we shot the film actually in Philadelphia and Budapest, believe it or not, even though it takes place in London and France as a independent World War II film. And we used the shooting locations and the tax credits to be in a position to make the film financially. And then we brought on a really strong team of women in front of the camera and behind the camera. In front of the camera, it includes top Indian star Radhika Apte in her American film debut, playing the role of Noor Nayat Khan. And then behind the camera, I was able to hire a female director, female production designer, female composer, to really have women working together to get this story about these hidden figures of the World War II spy world out there.
So, Sarah, so much about these women that you feature in the movie, A Call to Spy, is not known, was not in the history books. Why is that? Why hasn't it been told before? And how come you come to bring it to light for us?
Yeah, I really hope that this film changes that and that these women do end up in our history books, because the three women that A Call to Spy follows, which are Virginia Hall, Vera Atkins, and Noor Nayat Khan, were pioneers in the spy field. They were first in their profession who went in to spy in France, knowing there was a 50-50 chance of survival. And these women are basically the hidden figures of the spy world. They won every award you could imagine, from the Distinguished Service Cross to the Croix de Guerre. Yet they're not in our history books. And there are hundreds of movies about Churchill, but there are none until now about these women. So I really hope that changes. And I think we just need more female storytellers, female writers, and producers out there to dig these stories out and put them on screen.
So I understand you did a lot of research on this and dug into the files about these three women, the three spies. What did you find out that really helped you to develop some of their characters? And having seen them, I mean, they are amazing. And one, you play somebody who's an amputee, right?
Yeah.
So what did you find in these spy files?
The spy files were just fascinating on all three women, because what they were was not only their letters back to London, back to the spy agency, so you could hear kind of part of their voices and how they spoke, but also how they were graded and received by the SOE, which was this British spy agency. So, for example, Noor Nayat Khan, who's played by the amazing Radhika Apte, she was judged as, quote unquote, if this girl's a spy, I'm Winston Churchill, childlike, a doll. And those lines are actually in the movie. Yet she became a huge hero. And when she was captured and tortured, she did not give up any information about anyone. She was very brave. And then my character, Virginia Hall, who was the first female field agent and ultimately became the first woman to work for the CIA after the war, her letters that she wrote, some of those lines are actually in the script. There's a great one that I love that she says, when they're questioning whether to put her back in the field, she says something like, it's my neck. And if I want to get a crick in it, that's my prerogative. I just think that really gave me a sense of her personality. This was a woman who wasn't going to take no for an answer and was going to do it her way.
This is such a story about multiculturalism in the current day's rise of nationalism and extremism. And you really want to bring this forward of these three women. I was particularly fascinated by Virginia Hall because she was an amputee and she was being denied some roles and how she fought to get them. Can you describe a little bit more about your role and how you played this? And I know this was really physically strenuous to do.
Yeah, so Virginia Hall was born of a wealthy family in Baltimore, and she was head of her basketball team. She went to Radcliffe. She went to school in Vienna in France. She spoke many languages, and she really wanted to be a diplomat. She loved people. She loved traveling. She loved the world and its diversity. Yet when she was 27 years old, she shot her own leg off in a tragic hunting accident with her father's shotgun, almost died, had to have her leg amputated with a wooden leg. And because of that disability, and because she was a woman, the U.S. Foreign Service said, no, you may not be a diplomat. And she was well overqualified. And so instead, she became a spy for the British. And then, as I mentioned before, ultimately the first woman to work for the CIA. And what I so responded to her as a human being is this concept of people constantly told her no. And she felt she had a calling and a duty to protect the freedom of others. And she wasn't going to sit by and just let things happen. And I think that that is such a timely theme right now, the power of the individual, and that whatever you believe in, people may tell you no, but you just have to keep trying. You have to open other doors. So I love playing Virginia Hall. As you mentioned, I did have to play the physicality of her quote unquote limp. Now the Germans called her the limping lady, but her family, when I talked to them, said, she tried to hide the limp. It wasn't that big a limp. So I chose to underplay it. But at the same time, I had to wear this big, heavy wooden contraption on my own leg that was tied to my back until my back went out. And then we had to find other ways of doing it. And I actually ruptured my own Achilles tendon playing the role after shooting and couldn't walk for almost a year. And so there was an irony there that after playing her, I encountered some of the obstacles she encountered.
That's an amazing story. Just amazing. Here you wrote the screenplay, produced it, you play in it, and then you feel her pain physically by what you went through.
Totally. And something people don't necessarily talk about is how difficult it is to have a disability day in and day out. And, for me, I was in a wheelchair for a long time, and I'm a very tall person. I'm confident. I'm used to people looking me in the eye. And when that's taken away from you, people don't realize when they're talking down to you or looking at you a certain way. So I can only imagine, and this was only 1 year of my life, like this was Virginia Hall's entire life, and this was in the 40s, and she was a leader. I can only imagine the hurdles she had to encounter day in and day out. And interestingly enough, the prosthesis she was wearing, because it was the 40s, it was made for men, of course. So it didn't even fit.
Oh my goodness. Yes, right.
It was too big. And so she had blisters all around her, and just the pain that she endured without complaining day in and day out must have been very difficult to bear.
Well, I can already hear some ideas rolling around in your head for new productions that you may be working on. But before we get to new ones, let's go to Equity, your film about women on Wall Street. The story did not center around men as all the previous Wall Street movies had. You really took this to a new level with Equity. Tell us about this film a little bit.
Sure. So, full disclosure, my husband works on Wall Street. In fact, he worked at Lehman Brothers till the end. And my joke is I like to say that I married a rich man and then he went poor, and I stayed with him for love. So that's my joke. It's a bad joke. But anyway, it was on our honeymoon that Lehman went under. And, I really experienced as his wife so much of what was in that world at the time. And it was then that the idea came to me of, where's the film about the women? Because all the headlines are following the men. And, in social circumstances, like at dinners and drinks, I've met some of his coworkers who were women, and they were these fantastic, badass, pardon my French, but they are women changing the world on Wall Street. And they're not all bad people. And to me, the depictions of people on Wall Street were always negative, or most of the time negative. And so I wanted to tell the story about the women on Wall Street who are cutthroat. Some are good, some are bad, but they're really good at their job. And we hadn't seen that before.
Well, you tell the story really well. And there's so much about how women have to make it against men, but also against women. They're fighting, there's an infighting there. So the story has many angles to it about the competitiveness on Wall Street. And I think it was really well done. I'm such a big fan of what you have done to really move the needle for women on Wall Street. So thank you for Equity. There's one other film I wanted to talk about. 2012, you wrote the story and screenplay again and starred in Backwards. What prompted this film?
With Backwards, it was my first film, so I wanted to write something about what I knew. intimately. So I was an athlete in high school and college, and I loved Bend It Like Beckham and sports films, and wanted to tell one within the rowing world, which we hadn't seen before, but also within the Olympic world, because what I was really interested in is the concept of failing, or quote unquote failing, at the highest level. So what happens if you're the number one alternate or the person sitting on the bench at the highest level? And I thought that that would be a really interesting story to tell about, women athletes who almost make it, don't quite make their goal, and have to rediscover their life in a new way. And I also wanted to tell a film that was rated PG, family friendly for young girls, because again, when I was watching films, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of sex, and where are the vanilla, and I use the word vanilla not in a negative way, but vanilla films that families can all watch together that are just simple.
So here we have three films: Women in Sports, Women on Wall Street, Women in the War. I do wonder what's going to be next, and we'll chat about that in a moment. But I wanted to remind our audience that you are listening to Sarah Megan Thomas, award-winning actor, producer, and writer. The topics we cover, like today's, are all current, and a new topic with a new game changer is released on the third Thursday of every month. This is a great way to stay current on relevant issues happening around us. Now let's return to Sarah Megan Thomas. So as you are thinking about new projects, Sarah, how do you approach those? What do you focus on? And is it going to continue to be women and underrepresented groups? Or how do you evaluate what you want to work on next?
That's a great question. It has to be something that I think I can raise the money for. There's a good line in equity that is, don't let money be a dirty word. And without people like you, Janice, and the other amazing investors who have invested in me and my films, you don't have a movie. So it will have to be something in a commercial genre that I think will sell, that I think the press will pick up on. And then once it hits those criteria, yes, I want to tell films about women in commercial genres with an independent lens that have yet to be told. I really loved With a Call to Spy the inspired by true stories aspect. And so I think I may go back there for my next film.
So in this profession, which I think many professions for women, women on Wall Street and in male-dominated fields, it's difficult. How difficult is it in your profession? Because you've been doing it all in terms of writing the stories, doing the screenplay, producing it, and acting in it. How difficult is it for women in your profession?
I think it's changing, and I think there's a lot of optimism out there because there's awareness that there's a problem and people are starting to change how they think about women in film and hire more women in film. But it's still not great, to be honest. Like if you look at the statistics, there just are not a lot of female producers, writers, and directors. And it's going to take more female storytellers and diverse storytellers initiating it and making the project themselves to continue to have these new stories as opposed to, Spider-Man
Right.
100.
And you focused on bringing in women to be the directors or to assist in the screenplay, right? I mean, you've focused on the other female leaders in your field.
Absolutely. I think you have to be the change that you want to see. And, you mentioned that with equity, there was this aspect of women competing. That was one of the relationships. And I do think that that is true to life. There are a lot of women who really support each other and lift each other up. And then there is unfortunately, at times, this kind of queen bee syndrome of it's me or her, not me and her. And so on my end, I think it's really important to lift other women up, promote other women, not be competitive with A Call to Spy. I hired a first-time female director. She hadn't solo directed anything before. A first-time female production designer. She hadn't production designed anything before, but she was hugely established and talented as a set designer. And after our film, her next project was Julie Taymor's film that went to Sundance this year. And now she's working on a Sandra Bullock film. So it just takes that one step. And it really takes women helping each other actively, which I know you and I talked a lot about equity, we don't need to mentor. We need to lift each other up and help people with our actions.
Well, it was great fun being one of the investors because the women's network that was created for equity and for a call to spy as well, was really, they're friends of mine, and I've met new friends. So, and backing a woman such as yourself and what you were doing on a women's issue was really inspiring and motivating to have you do more so we could do more. And I do think that is really important. You mentioned, raising the money. It has to be commercially viable. Whatever you're doing has to be commercially viable, right? So how difficult is it to get that backing for films that are focused on women or underrepresented groups? And what other obstacles did you face? Just share that with the audience.
Yeah, I think fundraising is always challenging. And, as you know, Equity made a profit, but still, it was challenging for the next film. And I was so lucky that I did have a lot of investors that came back for A Call to Spy, but it was a larger budget and I had to raise more. And I think what it takes is find a good community, which you mentioned, which is finding investors that will not only invest, but much like you do, Janice, they host parties for their friends and they say, I'm investing in this film or I'm investing in this woman and this is why, and I think you should join. And that's really what has gotten all my films to the end line, is not just finding these amazing investors, but then having them become part of the team and lift everyone up.
What might grab your attention given the society today, the social unrest that's going on? Are there any topics that come to mind, any issues that really resonate with you?
Definitely. I think we live in a very divided country, which the election is bringing to light. And I think that's very sad. But I do want to tell more stories that have diverse men and women of all types. The three women in A Call to Spy, one was disabled, an American, one was a Muslim pacifist, and one was a Romanian woman who was Jewish and discriminated against. And yet, despite them being from different backgrounds and nationalities and religions, they united to resist a common evil. They found a way, and their diversity is what proved to be critical to the success of their respective missions. So I think there's a way in storytelling to tell positive stories. And that doesn't mean you don't have drama and conflict, but you can have real heroes, you can have role models. And that's really where my interest lies.
So for those out there that want to be a Sarah Megan Thomas or follow in a path such as yours, what's the advice you would give to men and women, but particularly women trying to really make it in this man's world that you live in so well? I mean, you navigated this terrain really extraordinarily and with great success. So what would be your advice to these women?
I think my advice would be to create the work yourself, at least to start. That's really how, in the film profession, most people are successful. So if you want to be a director, direct a short, write it, direct it, get it done. And it doesn't have to be a big budget feature right away. The good news is technology has, made it possible for you to shoot a film on your iPhone, but just get something done that you're really passionate about and that showcases you and your point of view. And my other piece of advice is don't take no for an answer. I mean, Janice, you know this, for every one investor you get a yes, you get 100 no's. And that's reflective all the way through the film process. From casting to hiring people, you get so many no's. And at any time you can just like hang your hat up and be like, that's it, I give up. But don't do that. Just say, I'm going to make this, I'm going to see it through, and then you will.
Sarah, you truly have been an amazing storyteller. And I have to comment that you have been doing it all. Is there a time when you're just going to let other people do part of it?
I hope so, Janice. I hope so. Some of it's been reflective of budget, right? You got to get it done on the budget you have, so you end up taking on maybe just a few too many roles. I mean, I was location scouting for this film, but yes, is the short answer.
So that would be my advice. But what has been the best advice that you have gotten in your career to promote you and what you're trying to do here? Messages to society, basically.
Gosh, that's a great question.
Well, I know your husband, Jason, has been giving you some good advice, the guy from Wall Street that you married.
Just stay on the path and don't take no for an answer and get it done. But I will give you another piece of advice that isn't related to my career that was very informative to my life. And that was after Backwards, I met with Stacey Snider, and I remember sitting in her office, and she said to me at the end of our lovely interview, take it or leave it. But my advice is, because we were talking about family, don't wait to start a family. And I had been waiting to start a family. And, I'm so glad that I took that advice and had my son, Christopher, and I now have my daughter, Madison. But, this is a career where you can get obsessed and, to also, as a woman, not feel like you can't have a family and have a job, because you absolutely can.
Well, you've been able to integrate it all very well, and I think you are a role model for many of us to follow. I want you to continue, though, to highlight women alongside men and just really have the power of our voice and our vote to help shape things to be different. So, Sarah Megan Thomas, thank you for joining us today, sharing your experiences, writing, producing, and starring in these wonderful films that we will all enjoy for many years to come. So A Call to Spy is currently available in select theaters, so please do watch these three remarkable women. And I want to thank our audience for tuning in to another game-changing conversation on Leadership Reimagined. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or visit our website at elliggroup.com. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes of Leadership Reimagined game-changing conversations released on the third Thursday of each month and available on my website. Thank you, Sarah Megan Thomas, for joining us today, and thank you to our audience.